Okay, I guess I better introduce... does everyone know who the hell I am? Does anyone know who I am? Wow. Oh, I've heard of you! Okay, my name is Jason Stark. I've been in the games development industry for about 20 years now. I am terribly, terribly old. So if I say anything you just feel free to ignore it. I worked in the ill-fated, well, I don't know if it's ill-fated, all things end eventually. Chrome Studios, has anyone heard of Chrome Studios? All right, I was there pretty much at the beginning to slightly beyond the end, although, believe it or not, it still functions in some capacity, even though it went bankrupt and they didn't pay out all our long service. I'm not quite sure how that works. Currently, I have a small studio up in Noosa, which operates out of our kitchen, thanks to the power of the NBN, called Disparity. Officially, we trade as Disparity Games, and that's where you can look us up if you want to find our website. We are probably best known for a game called Ninja Pizza Girl. Who has heard of Ninja Pizza Girl? We need to get better at our marketing. We spent way too long making Ninja Pizza Girl. We are releasing it. We've already released it. It's on Steam, it's on the Xbox One, it's on the PS4, and it's on the Wii U. Has everyone heard of the Wii U? May it rest in peace. I love my Wii U. I love it. I skipped the wrong Nintendo generations. I skipped the Wii and I got the Wii U, and now I'm skipping the Switch. Genius. If I buy a Nintendo console, that's the one that's going to fail. We've spent way too long on Ninja Pizza Girl. We are releasing on iOS in the next few weeks, so in total the production time is around about 5 years. If you remember nothing else from the talk, is the first thing is don't do that. Please don't do that. Don't take 5 years to release a game. It'll destroy you. Although it's an option. It's an option. I am here to talk about how you can make any game you want for $150,000, and also how to get $150,000. Everyone is interested in the second part, but trust me, the second part is a lot less fun than it sounds. And the first part is actually the interesting, inspiring bit. I made this talk because after I had spent 5 years making Ninja Pizza Girl, I played a game called Rogue Legacy. Who's heard of Rogue Legacy? I'm just nailing it here. I should just make up references. That'll be just... Rogue Legacy is a game, and it was made for $150,000, and it has made millions upon millions and millions of dollars. More importantly, it's a fantastic game, and I personally have spent about 20 hours with it. And when you play it, you see that it's $150,000. You quite see the simplicity of it. You see the genius of it. What you see is an idea distilled down. And I played that and I realized, because as an indie dev, you're always, one of the first things we always tell all the students, all the newbies, everyone, we go, reduce your scope, reduce your idea. I know you want to make an MMO, I know you want to make Skyrim, I know you want to make games that are actually good and fun, but you can't do that because we're all broke and we have no resources. So scope it down and think of something crappy and fairly uninteresting that you can actually achieve. I don't put it that way, I usually make it nicer, but I mean, that's what I think. Whenever I think, one day if I do really well making these little kind of meh games, maybe I'll get fantastically rich and I'll be able to actually make the game I want. And I played Rogue Legacy and I realized, I love this game. This game is fantastic. I was playing it instead of Dark Souls 3, because Dark Souls 3 actually felt very well polished and ironically soulless and stretched out and thin, whereas this was a game which was, just endlessly fascinating and dense and compelling, and I just was having a lot of fun with it. So they didn't make a game to keep them going until they got to do their dreams. They took their $150,000 and they made the game of their dreams. So that's the first part of the talk, is how you can take an idea and squish it down into something that's actually achievable. So I, instead of making notes or slides because I'm lazy, how lazy? Well, I endeavor to only spend 15 minutes preparing for talks. Because I'm busy. Okay, so here are some of my favorite games. And you can tell how old I am. That's an Xbox 360. Does everyone remember that? Okay, this is Mass Effect 2. I love this game. Yeah, a few people. Cool. This is something that people actually recognize. Cool. Okay, so let's say I want to make Mass Effect 2 for $150,000. All right. The first thing is I have to look at, I don't want to make Mass Effect 2 that you loved for $150,000, or you loved. I want to make the Mass Effect 2 that I loved for $150,000. And that was something I was going to bring. I was going to bring The Lord of the Rings, the book. Because how much money did The Lord of the Rings, the film trilogy, cost to make? I don't even know. It's been close to $1 billion or something? $500 million? How much did the book cost to make? The book has the same emotions, the same experiences. I would argue, actually has better ones than the film. And that's what I'm talking about, because the world is experienced in here. So when I'm talking about recreating Mass Effect 2, I'm talking about recreating the experience of Mass Effect 2. So what I liked about Mass Effect 2 was unlike most people, I did not like boning the partner of my choice. That wasn't my thing. It might be your thing. That's fine. We all get different things out of it. But what I loved was just fairly fun shooting and dramatic speeches. That's what I loved. I loved cranking up my Paragon and giving a massive speech and generally being awesome with the power of persuasive oration. Now, if all I loved about the game was decent shooting and good speech, I just have to make a decent, shooter. And we've got, I don't know, how old is Space Invaders? Seriously, how old am I? Because it came out about, it must be 35 years. So we've got about 35 years of somewhere between Space Invaders and now. We can just pick one. We can pick one and improve. Rogue Legacy does pretty much that. It takes what's more or less ghouls and ghosts, or ghosts and goblins. It refines it using everything we've learned about game design theory, and it puts that in a game, and it's really fun. And it was really cheap to make. So we can make a pretty decent shooter, and we can write it. If I can't write, I have to find myself a good writer, but trust me, writers are very cheap because they find it very hard to get a job. So we get that together and we make a game for $150,000. And because it's our version of Mass Effect 2, maybe I take that dramatic speech thing that I love, and maybe I expand it. Maybe you have to, during the game, maybe you have to collect ideas. Maybe when you're talking to people, they'll say things, little snippets, and maybe you have to grab that. Maybe you have to construct your speeches. Maybe there will be more consequences for failing it, because it's not a AAA game anymore. We don't have to model and painstakingly animate all the conversations, which is very difficult and can screw up, as we have seen in the latest Mass Effect. Everyone's aware of that? Okay, cool. I'd hate to refer to current affairs, and everyone's going, there's a big hullabaloo because of the latest Mass Effect. The facial animations are awful. We don't have to worry about that, because our characters are probably just a 2D image. There's something really cheap, really quick. Take a concept artist a day. There we go. We've got our AAA character done. Maybe the fail options can be more in-depth. Maybe we can go more intricate with our story. Maybe we can create a game that can actually do things that Mass Effect can't, because it is limited by its complexity. That's kind of cool. And you can make it for $150,000. You can actually make something which presents a fresh, unique take to the world for cheaper than what the original is. Where did I put the other games? Oh, here they are. All right, where's the other one? Okay, Dragon Age. It's more or less Mass Effect in fantasy world. You can see my tastes are very quite limited. The interesting thing about all the Dragon Age games is their combat systems uniformly suck. Unless you love them, in which case they're great. Does anyone love the combat in any Dragon Age game? Has anyone ever played a Dragon Age game? Did you like the combat? No, it's there, it's okay. It's okay. You go, I'll put up with it because I get to, maybe have sex with Morrigan. By the way, if you love the having sex part in this game, cool. You could make a proper relationship simulator instead of the terrible paper-thin representation they do in these games, where basically you just give someone enough gifts so they give you the big gift. I mean, and they don't treat you any different afterwards. You know, it doesn't change the story. They don't do anything. It's like, you know, it's fun to see how many partners you can have at once without them upsetting, but it's a very shallow representation of human relationships. If you like the human relationships in these games, if you're just doing a cheap version where they're just images on a screen and it's just text, then you can expand that and you can make that more interesting and you can systemize it and you can maybe do something which BioWare could never dream of doing because it would cost them too much. Anyway, the combat in this has always sucked. I played a mobile game, I don't know, in the very beginning of mobile games, and it had the best RPG party combat system I've ever played in my life. It's on a touchscreen. All you did was you had a wizard, you had a healer, and you had a fighter, and you could drag, and they'd move to where you dragged, and you could drag onto an enemy, and that's who they'd target. So, or an ally. So you could get your tank onto various targets to grab the aggro, and then you could get the mage to put the spells in there, and then you can get the priest healing the tank or the mage as required. And as enemies slip around and you lose control of the situation, you can reassign all this, which is basically what this game tries to do and fails, because it's very hard to represent these things in a 3D space, in a 3D world. It gets cluttered and messy very quickly. So to simplify and abstract that environment, which you have to do because you're cheap, you can actually make a better combat system than what a AAA game can. You can do it for $150,000. The more abstract you go, the cheaper something is. Dark Souls. Who's heard of Dark Souls? I have a personal thing where I have to make sure I talk about Dark Souls in every single talk I do. Normally people laugh at that bit. If your partner has played Dark Souls, you tend to think that's pretty funny. Okay, if you want to make a cheap version of Dark Souls, you could say you're sweet out of luck because there's already 20 billion people doing that. That's a slight exaggeration, but I know there's Sultan Sanctuary, there's that cool indie one that came out recently, and I know there's about 7 more coming real soon because people saw a niche and went, oh, that's making money, blah, blah. So give it up. No point. Useless. Absolutely. Well, you know, it's funny. Because when people make a cheap version of Dark Souls, they all do the same thing. They all go dark, gothic, art, and they all have a dying civilization where everyone's dying. It was once grand, but it's faded glory. It's rotting now. And it's always brutally hard because, as we know, that's the only thing that makes Dark Souls good. But it's weird because when I play Dark Souls, what I really like about it is the people stories. You might have noticed I like people. You guys are great. Because the character arcs and the conversations in Dark Souls is actually quite innovative. It doesn't get mentioned much. But the storyline are simple multiple choice things. They aren't, you go up to them, hi, how's it going? I'm okay. You pick one, the quest line. It's nothing like that. They're more influenced by what you do in the world. And it's the first few times you play the game, you might not meet half the people in it. And you might meet them and then they're gone. You never see them again. As you play it more and more, you will investigate that these people have little story arcs of their own. And if you go here and then go here and then do this, you'll see the story progress. And it's actually a kind of puzzle, trying to get these people have their endings. Some endings are happy, most of them are all interesting. And if you just rush through the game and kill the monsters, you don't even see them. They're like optional. That would be cool. You could make a game that focuses on that element, where there's people having lives, and they all have little stories, and they're altered and changed and affected by how you act in the world. You don't have to do this, but it's just my thought. Because I've taken Dark Souls and I've filtered it through the things I like, the things I experience, distilled it down, and you get something unique and fun. And you can do it cheap. In fact, the cheaper it is and the tighter the constraint, the more original you become. Low budget isn't awful, it's actually kind of liberating. I've talked too much. What game would you guys like? First person to give me a game that they want to make, a ridiculous AAA, impossible game to make, gets a red lolly.
Breath of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild, I knew you'd say that. So how do we take Breath of the Wild and turn it cheap? What do you like about Breath of the Wild? Tell me, because I can't stand the game.
The exploration, the exploring new areas and supplies that you get in those areas.
Be pretty hard to do that cheap, wouldn't it? You'd have to model a huge area. You know, unless of course I'd already predicted someone would say Breath of the Wild and exploring a huge area. I'd have to be smart to have predicted that. It is one of the things that's, you think, okay, this is Archipelago. It doesn't cost much to make. It's a bit of cardboard. It's got some plastic bits. Every time I play this game, I get a thrill of exploration. I never know exactly what's going to happen. I never know what the areas are. And it does that using the incredibly advanced technology of little cardboard hexagons, which are randomly laid out and attached every game. They look really cool. They snap together really interestingly. You never know which ones are going to come out. You never know which resources are going to be there. They're combined with a selection of cards and objectives, which transforms how you feel about these randomly generated things. Something as simple as, your objective of this game is to get pineapples. Pineapples are so hot. Maybe pineapples will be plentiful, but maybe the bastards will be nigh impossible to find, and all you can find is steel and rocks, and people are going mad fighting over the sole pineapple that comes up. They're building ships. We're deforesting whole areas so we can go exploring and track down the pineapple. You never know what's going to be there. Board games are fantastic, because video games, we're so literal. If we want to explore a world, with step one, build a world. Board games can't do that, so they make abstract representations of it. If you think, that'd never work in a video game, people would get very disappointed, like you look pretty disappointed by this. Yeah, it's just your face, you've got a resting disappointed face. You go, that's garbage. There was quite a successful game that did exactly this. It's called Hand of Fate. Who has heard of Hand of Fate? Shame on all of you. Oh, you've heard of it? Excellent.
We had Morgan here last week.
There we go. You should all have heard of Hand of Fate. It was made just down the road in Brisbane by Morgan Jaffet. And it has done bloody well. Like, really well. He doesn't give out numbers, because you don't talk about numbers. Unless you mean. You don't talk about numbers, because I thought, but it must have pulled in millions, because I've seen Hand of Fate too. Yeah. Bit of a step up. So it pulled in a lot. And also you can tell, because he's not sweating, they're coming up to releasing a game. If the person coming up to releasing a game is still, yeah, that's good. I'm releasing a game, whatever. You know they've got plenty of money still in the bank. And by plenty of money, I mean enough money to make a whole nother game, usually. Maybe maybe he's just really good at acting cool. But normally, if you're going, this game doesn't make money, you don't act all cool and breezy. So the Hand of Fate one did really well. If you're not familiar with it, it replaces all the exploration, all the wandering around in a physical world that's been physically made and is physically huge and physically costs millions of dollars, with a deck of cards. So you flip over a card, and it's got a little story on it, a little event. And they actually make up little mini stories that go through it. And because it's cards and not a physical world, you can do things to them. You actually can influence your deck, because you can get new cards and you can put them in and you can say, I want these stories. New storylines can be revealed randomly through it. So once again, they've taken a constraint, an abstraction, because they're cheap, and they've made it a point of difference, and they've done unique things with it. So they're not trying to do an exceedingly low poly, exceedingly crappy version of Zelda's world. It's going, no, we're not going to do that. They do basically this. They do an abstract thing. Board games are fantastic for you to check out because they really show you things don't have to be literal. For some reason in video games, if we want to do, I'm going to do a zoo game, we simulate the zoo, like we have animals and we have little people and they come in and we've got money in the bank, and if you do a board game about the zoo, they more ask the question, how do we way? And they do all these cool little clever abstract systems which are entertaining. You wouldn't use them one for one in video games because they're turn-based and relatively slow, but it's a different way of thinking about games. How long have I gone on for? How am I doing for time? All right. I need to pad. I'm going to pad by making someone else have. What other game do we all make? I'm going off script. I've got no idea what people will say at the moment. Come on. What? Street Fighter 5. Oh, that's a good one. I don't know. How would you do a cheap version of that? I don't know. You've learned nothing. I've talked here for 20 minutes. This is my best material. Here, mate, you go. Pick whatever colour you want. There were Skullgirls. They did it very high quality, and it was very expensive. In fact, they did a Kickstarter, I think, a while back for one character, like one new character, and I think they were asking, it was close to $100,000, and people flipped out. They were, no, make a character in an afternoon, look, I just drew one. And you go, you don't know anything. But if you do a high quality one, so you have to actually have a conversation about this. By the way, what character do you make?
I don't really play it.
That's funny. That's funny. No, I play the game. What fighting games, what 2D one-on-one fighting games have been described as is really, really, really fast chess or really fast poker. And I think both those things are taken. So think of chess or poker played in real time. That's the experience. You're making that face again. Everyone makes that face when I talk about it. It might not be that to you. You'd have to play it. You'd have to go, okay, this is what I love about it. So I can only extract my personal take on it. Unless you're going to talk, I'd love you to talk, because then I could just sit down and... No? No, okay. Well, I'm going to have to keep talking. So I'd say, okay, fast chess, fast poker. So then you have a game that those elements that you can make cheaper, that doesn't require tremendously expensive animation, because the animation on those characters are tremendous. I'm an animator. It's quite dear. So you find a game that has that incredibly quick, real-time strategic element. You make it playable online, and you do that. In fact, here we go. I've been playing a game. Now let's put aside monetization for a little while. Who's heard of Clash Royale? Not Clash of Clans, Clash Royale. All right. Yeah? You played it? No? You just heard of it. Okay, it's really good. It's really good. I haven't spent a cent. It's fine. Because I'm a very patient, very poor person. Actually, I wouldn't mind that's the funny thing. I wouldn't mind spending money on the game. It's a very good game. They just don't put an upper limit on it. If I could say, hey, I'll give you $50. I really like the game. They go, cool, that's a good start. Because there's no upper limit. If you want the very best game in it, they've done the calculations. It costs about $15,000. I'm not going to spend $15,000 on the game, so I'm going to spend $0 instead. It combines a trading card game, RTS, and mobile. It does it on a single mobile screen, and matches take 3 minutes. If someone had asked me to design that with all those constraints, I'd just say it's impossible. But they do. It's really fun. And it's really fun. It's strategically deep. Really easy to pick up and play. I could give it to any one of you and you could play it right now. I could give it to anyone in the street, even if they weren't familiar with games, and they'd be able to play it right now. Actually, I'm so impressed with it. I'll give a little demonstration. Can everyone see it? All right. So I'm going to have to lose this game, which will affect my ranking, which is really hurtful. Complex. On the surface, just looks like you're dragging people there. So that's what I do Fighter. I do the essence of what I liked about it. It mightn't look anything like physically animated people punching each other, because that's expensive. But I would get the essence of it. Or there's a card game called Yomi. Yomi is a Japanese. It's basically like getting in your opponent's head. It's like psychically predicting what they're going to do. And it's a term used in fighting games because, of course, they're very influenced by Japanese culture. And there's a card game called Yomi, and it simulates fighting games. And it's a deck of cards. It's not in real time, so you don't get that time pressure, but it replicates the strategy of a fighting game through cards, nice and cheap. So you could do a variant of that. So if you combine the ideas from Yomi with time pressure, you could do a cheap Street Fighter V. And you look disappointed. Everyone looks disappointed. It's trying to recreate the emotion, because that's what we do from games. It's not the specifics. It's how we feel. It's how we... Everything in the world actually takes place to us up here. So it's trying to push the same button. Does everyone want to hear about money? All right. Here is some back of a napkin maths written on the back of a napkin. I've deliberately done it that way because if you do up a PowerPoint presentation and you write down figures and you do an impressive chart, then people start going, this chart is good. And they start making notes, and they start asking questions, and they go, it's just something, it took me 10 seconds, it's really nothing. You can do the same maths yourself, it's just when you're talking, it breaks the flow if you have to pull out your calculator. Okay. So that's how you make any game you want for $150,000. After you've rethought the paradigm of what anything you want means, where do you get $150,000? Well, first, you use $50,000 of that to make a demo. You go, okay, that begs the question, where do you get $50,000, smart guy? This is the less fun of it. Okay, so let's look at what $50,000 actually means, because I don't think you're going to get $50,000. So what is $50,000? What that is, back in the old days, we used to say $10,000, you'd calculate for a person month. And that was about 10 years ago. So now, due to inflation and everything, it's actually much less than that, which is a sad reality. So it's about $8,000 per person month per work. And that includes paying the person and, super and, holidays and paying for the software and paying for the hardware. But you're not a company. You're not a CEO. You're not an incorporated, proprietary, limited, blah, blah, blah. You're just someone who wants to make a game. So when you do the maths, $50,000 for a demo, $8,000 per person month, that's what I'm really saying is 4 months. 4 people months to make a demo. Does that sound reasonable? Do you make a demo in 4 people months? I don't know. Can you? We're doing this. I could. If you can't, you've got to get better. Or find someone who can. And you don't have to do it by yourself. If you've got 4 people, that means you need a month. That actually sounds reasonable. Who's been to like a 48-hour game making challenge, a game jam? You get some good games out of those 48 jams. That's 48 hours. A month is longer than 48 hours. No, it seems obvious. Well, of course it is. I can't believe we invited him all the way from News to tell us a month is longer than 48 hours. A month is way longer than 48 hours. And you go, that doesn't sound very long, but yeah. Particularly if you've spent time planning. Like 4 people and they don't know each other and you're not quite sure what you're going to do and you go, okay, well, we're starting production today. You're probably not going to achieve much. But I mean, that's not how you go into a 48-hour challenge, and that's not how you would go into this month. You would have a plan. You would talk about things. You've got time. You talk about on the internet. You form your team. You go, all right, this is the idea we're going to do. Because planning time is fairly cheap. It's fairly easy. It's the fun bit. If you can't find problems. This is just assuming this is one way to do it. So the real question you have to ask yourself when I talk about you need $50,000 to make a demo, the real question is, how cheaply can you live for 1 month? I don't know. I have 4 bloody kids. Not very cheap. How cheaply can you live for a month? What's your figure? Come on. You go, Lolly. A couple of thousand. Now, if you can find 3 other people, then you can make your demo for a couple of $1,000. So for the demo, the real question becomes, where do you get a couple of $1,000? And come on, you guys can save up a couple of $1,000. Work for it. I don't know, get it from your mum. Find it from on the street. You can probably, with dedicated effort over the years, find $2,000. That's achievable. You don't have to do it that way. You don't have to do it that way at all. That's just one thing. That's a team of 4 living poor for a month. Don't have to do it that way. You can do it all yourself and save up. Well, it goes up, doesn't it? If it's $2,000 a month and it's $8,000, you can save up $8,000. I'd rather get other people. You can do it in your spare time. How much spare time? Oh, I've got another lolly. Assuming you're working or going to TAFE or whatever it is you do to support yourself, how much spare time a week do you think you can muster to work on your video game project? Anyone? No. A lot of people think that. But it's a good comment. So you go, love it. Because it lets me talk about something. Because a lot of people think that. We go through our lives thinking that. We go, oh, I waste so much time. If I just focused, I only work 40 hours a week, and I don't need that much sleep, and no, bullshit. You need to unwind. You need that relaxation time. I've done my napkin maths for 10 hours a week, and that is hard. I know it doesn't sound like much, but it is hard. It is probably harder than what's achievable for most people. Some people can do it. That's fine. Depends on the other things in your life. If you have 4 daughters, I would recommend against it. But 10 hours, consistent, every week, putting aside, working alone. It works out, the 4 months is 720 hours. If you're doing 10 hours a week, it's a year and a half to make your demo. When you do these things, it is important to put the numbers down. Because a lot of people go, I'll just make a demo in my spare time. I'll do it. I've got lots of spare time. I spend all that time playing Halo. I'm joking, no one plays Halo. But yeah, you have to do it, because 10 hours is very hard. 10 hours is around about the upper limit of what you can do, and yeah, a year and a half. Just the reason why I include this is because there's nothing wrong with doing it that way. There's nothing wrong with going, I am plugging away, I hate other people hate me, and I hate working with them, so I'm going to do it by myself. Who has heard of a video game? Who's heard of a video game called Hacknet? find out more about video. These are all local games. They're all made in Australia, not local Brisbane, but local Australia. Hacknet was made in Australia. It's made him a lot of money. He can quit his job now. He was very, very happy. We know because he beat us in the Australian Serious Games Awards that year, which is fine. It's fine. He plugged away. He made the entire game. He didn't just make the demo, which I recommend. He plugged away. He made the whole game in his spare time. Took him 6 years, which becomes remarkably close to my incredibly robust calculations here. Took him 6 years working by himself. There's many downsides to doing it that way, but I just want you to know that this is possible. I'm not going to tell you a way to make your game. I'm going to tell you several ways you can make this game. I know of someone else who is doing, they're paying people in, percentage points in the profits. It's fine. And they've got a team of 12, and they only ever work for like a week or two, and they've got 12 people, and that is it's a big management challenge, because you've got a lot of different people coming on, a lot of different ideas, but the people coming on are all specialists in their field, so they do very high quality work. So if you're a great manager, and you know a lot of good people, do it that way. And if you're very convincing, because they're effectively working for free. But maybe if the idea is good enough. So they're just ways you can go, okay, so you've got a demo. It's a good demo, by the way. It's not a demo where you go, oh yeah, it does this and don't go that way, and it'll, imagine it'll be a lot better. It's got to be a good demo. It's got to be a demo that you would have to take to PAX. Please tell me you know what PAX is. Sweet. PAX or any trade show, you can go to PAX. You can show it at PAX. If you don't have it for a booth, you can just walk around the floor and harass random journalists. That works. People have got doing that. You just walk around. Although, having said that, the indie booths that they have, I don't know if you've been to, has anyone been to PAX? It's very expensive, I don't blame you. It's hugely expensive. They have these little indie booths, and they're very cheap. By very cheap, I mean like a bit under $1,000, I think. You have to be accepted in. Now, if you don't get accepted in, it's because your demo, and if your demo is not, well, chalk it up to experience and make another one. And that's one of the reasons why I stop at the demo phase. Because it might not be good enough. Because at this point, this is where you start showing it to other people. Because if you've got a demo and it's compelling, you'll know it. We took the demo for Ninja Pizza Girl to PAX Oz, and people kept asking us, so when's it coming out? And we go, well, we don't know yet. They go, well, what's... And they honestly said, what's there left to do? Even though they were playing 90 seconds of a video game. And that was fine, because that's exactly what our demo did. It looked like 90 seconds of a completed video game. And I know it sucks to make a game that way, because there's so many things you've got to get in that you would rather leave till the end. But this is the real world, and we've got to sell our stuff. So that's the sort of demo it's got to be. It's got to be something like, yo, this is a good game. This is really fun. This is like Rogue Legacy without a lot of the power-ups and maybe just the castle tile. It's fun. You can go in there, you can get the action, you can do that. The big thing about Rogue Legacy is the levels are procedurally generated, so they're random every time. So I'd want to demo that, and I'd want to demo the basics of the combat. That's really fun. Then you start showing people. Number one rule of succeeding in game dev, and this is the one, if you've been making horrid faces before, this is the one that'll make everyone have horrid faces. Number one rule, the advice we have given from the very start, the advice we give every talk we present, is make friends. That's the key to succeeding in games development. So go to meetups. You're here, so that's excellent. That's good. Tick. That's step one. And you're listening to me and you've met Morgan. That's very good. If you had a right now, after I stop going on and on and on about stuff, you'd come up to me and you go, oh, no, no. I've just got this game here. You want to check it out? And you think, but that schmuck in glasses doesn't have $100,000 to finish my game. I know people who do. I know people who might. And so you keep showing it to people. Of money out there which you are not. And I can't be too specific because they don't want a flood of people knocking on their door. And there are sources of money out there where they don't know they're a source of money. Any successful developer is worth talking to. If you have got a demo which is compelling and original and fun, and you have already invested $50,000 of your own, by the way, learn to cost your time properly. So when someone says, oh, how much money have you spent on this game? You don't say, oh, well, I lived in my mum's basement and, you know, the Cheetos cost $500 a week. No, cost it properly. So your demo cost $50,000 and you have invested $50,000 into your own idea. Oh, you sound better now. And you can talk about, you know, well, expected return and whatnot, so 50,000. Yeah, to talk as if, you know, you could have done more. Yeah, we picked 50 because we thought it was a good price not to overinvest on an idea before it's proven. Don't say, oh, I was so hungry, and the money ran out after that. That's very important. So you invested $50,000 into your own idea, which was an entirely appropriate and calculated amount of money to invest. And you're only asking for 100,000 more to finish it. That's an incredibly good deal. That's a really good deal for anyone with money. And another reason why I'm not giving specifics, saying, oh, I'll talk to this person, is because it changes every few months. And your biggest spend, apart from, of course, food and rent, is going to be travel. And I can tell you that Spring Queensland does give out travel grants. And they're pretty good about that. So if you go, okay, well, I want to go to PAX. I want to go to GCAP. I want to meet some people. I desperately need to meet some people. Or the other tactic, and this is a brilliant tactic, is move to Victoria. Because they actually have a system that handles this. And you don't have to try too hard. I mean, you do have to try, of course, the competition's fierce. You have to live there for a year. Oh, wow. Really? Because I know a few people who have. What, in Melbourne? At the Victoria thing, or the Queensland one? If you're outside of Melbourne. Okay, well, I know the Melbourne people get, it's just a grant. They don't have to pay back anything. My wife... Fair enough. Okay. But it's well, how recent's your knowledge? Because my wife's actually on the board. my wife's actually part of the selection panel. So they were at one point asking people to recoup it, and then what they realised was they were sending some people bankrupt. So these days they just... Yes. No, they were serious. So like even if a game, you know, they say, okay, well, we'll give our money back, and they were just destroying people. Because that's the other thing. It's not pertinent to this talk, but don't put your entire future on the line of the success or failure of a game, because it will fail and your life will be over. Always make sure that you know exactly what's going to happen if your money makes $0. Release on Steam, doesn't make anything. You go, oh, that's fine because I've got this job lined up here. It's fine, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I've got enough money in the bank. Or even if you don't have a job lined up, you go, that's fine. Do not finish your game with $0 in the bank. That's very bad. For one thing, Steam or App Store, everyone takes several months to pay you. So ending with 0 is bad. Make sure you have a few months in the bank so you can use that money to find a job. There is no shame in doing a job. There is also no shame in doing contract work during production. That's another thing you can do. You can do bits and bobs of odd jobs. One of the reasons why Ninja Pizza Girl has taken 5 years is because we have not been doing Ninja Pizza Girl. We've been working on other things at the same time. And it sucks. And we would have much rather loved to live in our happy paradise where all we had to do was answer to ourselves and make our own games, but we need to eat, and so do my 4 children. I can't remember where I was. Oh yes, you've got your demo. You're shopping it around. All you need is $100,000. And seriously, if it's a good game, it's a good idea, and you get out there and you meet enough people, if your game is good enough, it should eventually attract the eye of people, and you will encounter the money, but you have to get out there. Because seriously, a $100,000 investment on something that's already proven and already had half as that much put into it is it's a good sell. It's a decent deal. I know it's an incredibly high risk venture, video games, as I've said, but there are people out there now who are specializing in that high risk venture and realize that, you know, for every 10 failures there's that one success, but the one success will pay for all the failures. They are out there. They are scattered across the country. There are people in other countries. There are publishers which you can approach that advertise if it's a good game. The struggle through for, like, you know, give it a good year or two, because it might take a while to find people, but if it doesn't, then you just shrug and you make another demo. Maybe it wasn't good enough. But hey, at least you didn't invest $150,000 in it before finding out. Now everyone's a little bit disappointed because my answer on how to get the money isn't as fun or exciting as you thought it would be. Because really the TLDR version is you save up the first bit, live cheap, and then you attract investments for the others. We can talk about a few other things. Kickstarter. Don't do it. It's awful. There are Kickstarter successes. If you are convinced you are the starry-eyed special person, the one in the billion who can magically... I wouldn't. You usually need the most successful Kickstarter that I know of locally is 5 Lives. You don't know who 5 Lives are, do you? They made a game called Satellite Rain. You don't know what Satellite Rain is, do you? They raised nearly about $1 million on Kickstarter. But that was shortly after Kickstarter started, and it was with a nostalgia connection, which is the hook that gets you money on Kickstarter. It was a spiritual successor, and they had the coda to the game they were doing the spiritual successor to. And even then, if they were to do it today, I doubt they would raise a quarter of what they did. We did a Kickstarter. We are never going to do a Kickstarter again. It was for $35,000. We just made it. When we did our calculations, here's the funny thing. Kickstarter takes a month. During that month, you achieve nothing else but run that Kickstarter, which is weird because if you ask me what I did every day in the Kickstarter, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I don't know, I got up, I was anxious, and then I collapsed. You end up living in 3 time zones simultaneously. You write a lot of articles, you post a lot of updates, you answer a lot of people, you overpromise things. So for a month, you lose a month, and then you have to prepare for it for a month, and then you have to look after all your backers and do community management and whatnot, and that's nearly another month. So we raised $35,000 minus the rewards, minus the percentage of Kickstarter to pay for 2 people for 3 months. We could have done better by working at McDonald's, putting the money in the bank. The only thing was the Kickstarter did provide a lot of marketing. But I mean, we were a success. There were plenty of people who failed, who threw all that money away and time and effort and didn't even get any money out of it in the end. So I have a dim view of Kickstarter. I don't think that comes as any surprise. I think the general consensus is that it's done its dash as far as video games funding is done, except for very specialist cases. So, but I mean, once again, there's nothing wrong with getting a team of people, saving up enough money and just making the whole game. There's nothing wrong with doing it in your spare time. Time, this is what I want to say about doing the Hacknet story, where it takes 6 years. One of the reasons why he was super successful, it's a good game. It's a good game. It happened to release after 6 years of development. 6 years! His spare time. He happened to release it like after the second episode of Mr. Robot, where for that period in time in pop culture, hacking was the coolest thing in the universe. And it almost looked like it seriously did look like an officially licensed title. The synchronicity was so good. And he just released it and went boom. So cool. The problem with taking 6 years is you can't plan for ridiculous things like that. You don't know what the landscape will be 6 years from now. When he started, there was no such thing as Greenlight. If he'd taken a little bit longer to release, maybe Greenlight would be gone. Actually, is it gone now? I can't keep up with Greenlight. Is it still there? Still there? They're talking about getting rid of it. Yeah. Yeah. In 6 years' time, you don't know what sort of game people like. You don't know what markets are viable anymore. You don't know what game length it should be. You don't know what game type it should be. You don't know who should publish it. You don't know who to sell it to. If you're lucky, you've guessed correctly. I would recommend making decisions that shorten the production time whenever possible. If you have a choice between doing it part-time for 2 years or working really hard for 18 months, saving your money and then dedicating yourself to it for 6 months, I would go that option. But once again, it's your life and there's a million ways to cram this in. And I have seen games made using every which way, every ridiculous cobbled together funding system that you can imagine. There is nothing with living with your parents, a partner or a spouse who makes money going, hey honey, video games make a lot of money and I guarantee this one will, and I'll do all the cleaning forever. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, my wife and I quite often say the dumbest thing we ever did was marry each other. We should have married other normal people and just worked with each other. She always wanted to marry an accountant, and she should have married an accountant, I should have married a doctor, and we should have, well, we know people, and that's fine. That's fine. But even if you've got that permanent income and you go, oh, this is breezy, remember to do this. Remember to keep this in mind, because life is deceptive and it's very easy to go, I'll find the time, or it won't go on too long. Always plan and know what you're doing and how you're spending your money and where your time's going. Because without a plan, you just turn to waffle and it never gets done. And that wraps it up. Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question about your tax demo?
Yes.
You're saying it's 90 seconds of a full day?
Yeah, pretty much.
How polished was that? And how important do you reckon polish is?
It is
for
very
you?
important. It is very important.
Yeah.
Compared to the final game, it's, you go back and you go, oh. But someone just looking at it go, oh, this is a very fairly presentable game. Of course you will add more polish to
Yeah.
it.
So you recommend spending money on getting artists to polish it?
Unless the core concept is amazing. Okay. Has anyone heard of Caves of Quad? Everyone keeps looking at me as if I'm that. If you search the genre roguelike, does anyone know what a roguelike is? Okay, cool. It's a genre of video game. If you search on Steam for roguelike, it's result number 5. And it follows traditional roguelike art. So it is all, if you don't know the original game Rogue, because it was in the 70s, actually used ASCII. So this one uses incredibly rudimentary art, which is almost ASCII art. Oh, that reminds me, I'm into a bit more. That's something else. So if you're, and that works because people expect that from a roguelike. If you're trying to make a Street Fighter clone and they're stickman So sometimes you can get away with it, but otherwise, yeah. People have to look at it and go, I know it's annoying, and it would be great to be able to sell a game on concept and the strength of its design, but people are stupid. They're really stupid. It's very, and that's everyone, that's me. It's really hard for us to dissect why we like something and pull the bits out. We pretty much just go, oh. They go, what'd you like about it? So, you know, the art, the sounds, one thing that we suck at. So we got, there's a funny story on that as well. But you find the pieces you like, unfortunately. I will talk a little bit about early access, Steam early access. It's worth a shot. It's worth a shot if you have the right sort of game. It's people who go into an early access game, they expect one thing, and that is regular updates. So as soon as you spit that game onto early access, you are no longer just cruisily making a game. You are constantly updating an early access game. Yeah. Okay. You guys know. You miss an update, everyone goes, the game's dead, and they leave.
Rust, for instance, it's very just if you don't get an update the week, you're in the shit.
Yeah. So that's a crazy amount of pressure and doesn't combine well with the doing it part-time. But it's another piece, it's another option. If you have the right game, if you have a scalable game, I think I can tell you, there's a really well-done book. If you've got the right scalable game where you can get the core gameplay aspect of it and you can bolt pieces on the roguelike, then yeah, early access is possible. Don't expect early access. Once again, don't run out of money and then go, early access will save us. Please always have a few months in the bank or a plan or your mum's phone number or something. Always have a fail-safe. Do never run to the line. Why do I keep saying this? Because we did. We did several times. It was bad. You mustn't do that, especially if you're in and you live in a house with a low rent. Don't do that. We were lucky. We were saved by people, mostly by friends. Don't mention that you make friends. We were saved by friends. We were saved by family. We felt bad about ourselves. Plan accordingly. Don't ever go to the wire. Always go X few months. Okay, what I was going to say afterwards. Of course, the solutions that you will encounter for making these games cheaply will vary, but one of the ones that I think is key and keeps coming up a lot and does relate to our personal experience is procedural versus generated content. We made the demo in weeks ago. It took us about 3 months. People said, when's the game? Go make it. And we said, soon. And it came out like 3 years ago. And that was making levels takes a lot of time. Never do anything which requires you to bake lighting. You'll get excited by baked lighting. You'll go, look, I'll just sort of put some lights here and I hit the bake button and that looks okay. That looks pretty good. I'm going to use baked lighting. And you go, that lights up all right. Well, with that, I'll hit the bake button again. Oh yeah, now it's got, wait a second. Oh, hang on, I want to move this platform up. That's okay, I'll hit the bake button again. And then your levels get bigger and bakes take about an hour. And then Unity upgrades keep breaking your light vector. And it's stupid. Anything in your production where you have to hit a button and wait an hour, eliminate it. You don't have time for that. Even design, like just the process of painstaking. I mean, Ninja Pizza Girl's got these handcrafted levels. Brilliantly handcrafted. Rogue Legacy doesn't have any of that. It's random. And when I say random, it's not pure random. It didn't just take pixels and throw them at the screen. They've got a few rooms. Actually, there's someone's got a wonderful working demo of Spelunky. Have you heard of Spelunky?
Yes.
Yes! That's those 4 people! Everyone's heard of it. Okay, it's a roguelike, and if you just go Spelunky level generation, Google it. You'll have to buy a long keyboard. I don't know what that is. It's a guitar or something. playing the piano. Google Spelunky level generation, and they will go through it, and it's tile sets, and there's little random variations on that, and it is way less work than handcrafting those levels, and it's way more interesting, and because the slight variations every time you play, when you play a game a few times, it inevitably becomes a process of memorization. You're not developing the skill to dodge that bullet, to get that enemy to go that jump. You're just remembering the solution. And it becomes a bit dull. When things are random, you're always reacting to a situation fresh. I have put, I don't know how many hours into Rogue Legacy, 20. There are people who have put in hundreds for this tiny little game, simply because every time the subtle variation makes it fresh. Same with Spelunky. And it made me feel stupid to see all this playtime and replayability and absorption generated from stuff that was a lot less work than my freaking light-baked, handcrafted Ninja Pizza Girl levels. I had done so much more work for something which wasn't as interesting. And you can still have levels, and you can still have points. You can even make pacing. You can go, oh, but if it's random, I won't have pacing. I won't have intense bits. I won't have fight bits. If you can. Any rule that you can think of for design, you can encode. You can have a system. Also, don't think, oh, but I'm not a genius coder. You need to be a genius coder like Sean Murray to do who likes that. It's hilarious. You have to be a genius coder like Sean Murray. No, you don't. No, you don't. I used to think that. I used to think, oh, I'm not smart enough to. Here we go. Back to my tile set. This is all it is. Seriously, you should be able to cut things out of cardboard and go, all right, well, my procedural generation, we're going to have tiles like this, and we're going to make sure ocean hits ocean and everything lines up. You should be able to, it's design, it's not code. And once you start thinking of it that way, oh, well, if this was a board game, if I was just telling someone, just instructing someone how I would build a level, go, okay, we'll make a very dense bit here with lots of enemies here, and they could appear in these random positions here. It becomes quite straightforward. And you can make it as random or as tile generated, or all the rules, you can encode in there. And you will get infinite variety. And going back to the early access, it's expandable. It's DLCable. Because you don't release games anymore. If they're successful, you make them until you die. You certainly have a post-release strategy in place because people want to see content. If you're very lucky, you can convince them to pay for it. But I mean, Terraria, Minecraft, they've been expanded for ages. Hand of Fate has, I think, a few free patches, and then they start charging DLC. But they have a strategy, and it's a game structure that they can add to. So that's another advantage. So that is my one tip. Obviously, every game type that you guys come up with, and they will be unique, and they will be original, and they will be wonderful, because that's the constraints working. But I would recommend procedural over generated, because generated sucks up time. You never do anything, you have to hit a button and wait, because you don't have that much time. Think like what strategy would work in a 48-hour challenge, but you don't have 48 hours. And that's it, I've run out of things to say. Thank you very much for your time.